Internet. It is on Malik Aaron, and welcome back to Box Office Predictions. Today we're going to be talking about The Exorcist Believer. So, as usual, we're going to be going over the pros and cons. So, let's get to it. Pros. So, this is the latest Exorcist flick. There's been 6 of these things. And the thing that's special about this one is that this is being built up as the true follow up to the original Exorcist. Like Exorcist 2, 3, Beginning, Dominion, those do not matter. They are irrelevant. They are erased from canon pretty much. Like this is supposed to be like the real sequel. And with the original Exorcist, like this is absolutely a horror classic. It's a movie that had a very interesting production, lots of weird things going on, deaths and accidents and just weird things. There was like a rumor that the whole movie was cursed. And then when it came out, people were like all horrified and stuff. They were like vomiting and fainting, and I find a little hard to believe because like I've seen plenty of horror movies. I've seen some nasty horror movies, and not once have any of them made me vomit. But I've never seen The Exorcist, so maybe this could be the one. But I doubt it. I'm pretty desensitized to a lot of stuff in the horror genre. But yeah, that original Exorcist movie, it messed people up, and a whole bunch of people watched it. It's like 200 million domestic, although that was through several re-releases. 400 million worldwide, again, several re-releases. And it's an iconic film. It has spawned many, many, many movies that want to be the Exorcist so bad, but just failed to do so. And I'm gonna talk about that later because I have a whole tangent prepared when it comes to movies trying to be The Exorcist. But yeah, the original Exorcist is a classic. It's very well known. So obviously, you got brand recognition on your side here. So brand name recognition. That's pro number one. Let's see. Pro number two. There's no serious competition. It's pretty much like this movie and that's it for this weekend. I noticed the Hocus Pocus re-release, but I don't think that's gonna make much of an impact. And I know Saw X came out last weekend, but besides that, there's no real direct competition for Exorcist Believer until the end of the month, and that's with the Five Nights at Freddy's movie. But that's like 3 weeks from now, so this movie has time to play out for all of October, so that's good, I guess. So lack of serious competition, at least serious direct competition, because there is competition. It's coming up real soon and it will not be very pretty. But direct competition is not so bad. So I'm labeling that as a pro, lack of serious direct competition. I'm struggling to think of some other ones. Okay, another pro I can think of is the fact that shoot, I think I forgot. I guess I could mention his preview numbers. Like they're fine. They're not amazing, but they're not terrible. 2.85 million for comparison's sake. Uh let's look at horror movies that have come out this year. Saw X is one, very recent. Saw X, The Nun 2. Yeah. Uh Evil Dead Rise, let's go with that one. Evil Dead Rise. Trying to look up like franchise installments. I don't want to use like original movies because I feel like that's not a fair comparison. Um I guess these are fine. So looking at Saw X, which came out last weekend, that opened with 18 million, had a Thursday preview of 2 million, so it's well ahead of that. The Nun 2, preview number was 3.1, so it's a little less than the Nun 2, and the Nun 2 opened with like 32 million. And then you got Evil Dead Rise, which had a Thursday preview of 2.5 million, opened with like 24 million. So it's in relatively it's in a relatively good place when compared to like all these movies. So I say his preview numbers are just good, not great. So I'm gonna label that as a pro. And I guess another thing I can mention is that the director of this movie, actually the whole creative team of this movie, are the same people responsible for the recent Halloween movies. You know, this thing, Halloween 2018, which, like Exorcist Believer, like Halloween 2018 was built up as the real sequel to the original Halloween, and every other Halloween that came in between the original and 2018 no longer existed. None of them matter. And that strategy, it worked out very well because this movie like did spectacular, opened with 76 million, which is insane for horror standards. Made 159 million domestically, 255 million worldwide. It's pretty easy to see why Universal will want the same creative team from this to work on something else, like another horror property. And they also made Halloween Kills and Ends, and I'll talk about them later because this is not going to be positive. But the director had success, or at least initial success, with revitalizing Halloween. So I guess it's a pro. It'll be a minor pro. And I think that's it with pros. Cons, reviews, they are ass. They are terrible. I wasn't expecting anything great, but damn, man. This thing has a 22% critic score. It's been, I haven't seen, I think the last time I seen a score this low was with, what was it? Expendables, like 2 weeks ago. But that score is actually lower than this. But still, 22% is dismal. And what's even worse is its audience score, 54%. That's fatal. That's death. That is a sign that this movie has some toxic word of mouth. And its cinema score, which is up here, it's a C, which is a pretty standard for horror. Horror has a rough time with cinema score, but even then, like a C is not ideal, like at all. I mean, Nun 2 got like a C plus at least, and Saw X got a B. Talk to Me got a B plus. Yeah, this does not look good. Actually, I want to check. Like, what did the Halloween movies get? The recent ones, just out of curiosity. Halloween 2018 got a B plus. Halloween Ends got a C plus. Oof. So yeah, that C cinema score, that critic score, that audience score, all those things are bad. Very bad. So yeah, big con right there. Those all those. Another con is the fact that, okay, here's the tangent. Exorcism movies. They need to die. They need to die. There are too many of these things. There's so many. It drives me mad. I can't even think. It drives me mad. Possessed. I think that's the right word. But there's so many of these stupid things. I literally just made a movie. I literally just talked about a movie called The Pope's Exorcist earlier this year. There's that. Pray for the Devil. Does The Grudge count? Not really. Possession of Hannah Grace is one. The Nun, I don't know about that. I'm trying like straight up exorcism movies. There's those. I know there's, I guess, Ouija, Incarnate, Bye Bye Man, Other Side of the Door, Witch, Sinister 2, and Insidious 3. There's so many of these. Deliver Us from Evil, Oculus, the Paranormal Activity movies, well, kind of. These are like possession movies, but the Conjuring movies, the Insidious movies, freaking The Last Exorcism Part 2, The Last Exorcism Part 1, I guess. Then there's just The Devil Inside, that's a very infamous one. The Possession, there's too many. Exorcism of Emily Rose, Exorcist the Beginning. There's too many of these. And the thing is they all feel the same. They all like they're all clones of the original Exorcist. They're all inferior clones to the original Exorcist. Like if you were to tell me that all these movies took place in the same universe, I wouldn't even think twice. I'd be like, yeah, makes sense to me. Like they all feel the same. And it's very clear this genre, this subgenre of horror has peaked 50 years ago. So if your genre has peaked like a half a century ago, I think it's time to put it to bed. Okay? I think it's time to just give up and stop. So, yeah, like with this, like sure it has the brand name, but just looking at it, like there's no real difference between this and like any other exorcism movies I've seen, or at least I've seen like trailers of or clips of, like in the last like few decades. Like this doesn't stand out at all. So yeah, just the subgenre of exorcist movies, that whole subgenre, that's a con, definitely. Um, I guess another con, something that I thought was a red flag, was the fact that this is supposed to be the start of a trilogy, right? And the second movie already has a date for April 2025. And that date was announced well before this movie came out. And you would think, "Oh, how is that a con? That's a good thing. That shows confidence." But I know from like past experience that is a sign of doom because I remember Fantastic did the same thing. That movie, it was Fantastic 2015. There was supposed to be a sequel in 2017. They announced the date of the sequel well before the first movie even came out. And then the first movie was an absolute disaster, and that sequel died. So whenever I see a sequel be announced and get a date way before the first movie, that that's just the red flags are going off for me. That just tells me that the studio, they know that first movie is shit and they just want to make the sequel to hopefully sucker in enough people like to watch that first movie. Like that's the vibe I'm getting from that. So yeah, the fact that they announced the sequel like way before the first movie even released, I'm labeling it as a con because ideally you should focus on that first movie, and if it's good and if it's a hit, then you announce sequels. You don't do the opposite. Okay? So, yeah, I'm labeling that as a con. And then another big con is that next weekend is the Taylor Swift Eras Tour concert movie, and that is expected to make big money. Like that thing has already sold 100 million like pre-sales. It's made 100 million pre-sales globally, and it hasn't even opened in theaters yet. Like that is crazy. And I feel like that movie is that's gonna suck up all the box office dollars from every other movie in the marketplace, except maybe Paw Patrol. That might be the one movie that avoids, doom. But all the other movies are pretty much screwed. So yeah, I feel like this is definitely gonna be one of them. So yeah, dealing with the Taylor Swift Eras Tour, that's a big old con right there. Uh I guess I can mention the franchise itself, The Exorcist. Like the series peaked with the first movie, and like situations like that, that's no good. I mean, like Exorcist 2 is considered an absolute embarrassment. The Exorcist 3 isn't considered the worst, but it's not like great. Then Exorcist the Beginning, this thing. The thing is, I didn't know much about this But from what I've heard, from his production history, it is wild. It is absolutely insane. This movie went through like three directors, and like the second director, like after his version of the movie was filmed, the studio fired him. Like after the movie was already filmed, like usually when a director gets fired, it usually happens like before production or during production, not after production. So that's really weird. And then the new director, I think it was Rennie Harlan, he came in, basically reshot like the whole movie. Then he got hit by a car, and he had to film the movie on crutches. And then the movie was in just absolute hell for a long time. And I think it was only finished like I think like the week of the premiere, maybe like the few days before the premiere. Like that's crazy to me. And the thing is, like, I've never seen this movie. I haven't even seen a single picture from this movie. All I've seen is this poster, and that's it. And then this movie was a total bomb. It opened like 18 million and made like 41 million domestic. Total bomb. Total disaster. And then that second version, that I guess the original version of this movie, was Dominion prequel to The Exorcist, which didn't even get like a wide release. And that wasn't even good either. I mean, it was better than the beginning, but not by much. So yeah, the series, the Exorcist movies, it's been bad. It's been rough. Like none of them have been able to capture that original magic of the first movie, and Believer is no exception. So yeah, sure, Exorcist is a well-known like when people talk about The Exorcist, they talk about the first movie. They never, ever bring up any of the follow up movies unless they want to talk trash about them. But yeah, so the Exorcist movies, after the first one, it just tanked so hard. So yeah, I'm labeling that as a con. But I guess I could also mention that, I guess as a minor pro, is that it is October, it's the spooky month. So it's appropriate for this movie to come out in October. So that might help the movie out a bit, maybe, theoretically. So I'm just going to label that as a very minor pro. But now I think that's it. So opening weekend, this movie was like projected to open with like 30 million something. That's not happening now. I doubt that's even possible. Um, it'll probably be like below 30 million. It probably open with like 25 to 30 million, unless word of mouth gets super toxic, which wouldn't surprise me, and that number just sinks lower. But it will win the weekend, so it will win the weekend by pretty much default. It won't be because of strength. And then it's total. This movie will have no long legs. I don't see that happening. I I'll be shocked if this has decent legs. I think I'll probably have an anemic multiplier of like maybe two or less. um, I'm gonna say less than $60 million. I'm gonna go with that. Less than 60 million, 50 to $60 million. If it does better than that, then I'm wrong. But I see this movie dying a quick death in theaters because word of mouth is so bad. So yeah. So yeah, that's, and I forgot to mention that Universal, like, they paid $400 million for the IP rights for this stupid thing. 400 million, man. And it's supposed to spawn a trilogy, and part of me feels like that trilogy is gonna end at one. Unless this movie like really makes like a, I don't even think it's a smart idea to make that second movie. But I feel like they might just do it out of just pure stubbornness. But yeah, like ugh. It seems like that trilogy is looking like it's in jeopardy. Because like after this movie, like who the hell wants to watch the other two movies, right? Like seriously. So that's Exorcist Believer. Now there's one more movie to talk about this weekend. It's a re-release of an old movie. That movie being Hocus Pocus. I'm not doing When Evil Lurks because that movie is gonna be in like streaming like 3 weeks. So there's no point in making a video about that. So I'm going to do the Hocus Pocus re-release. Then the next week is the big one, the Taylor Swift Eras Tour. That's going to be a video. Let me tell you. Oof. That's going to be quite the video. So stay tuned for those videos. But yeah, that's it. That's all. Make sure to subscribe, like this video, leave a comment, turn notifications, share the whole drill. We'll check out more videos like this. I got a playlist on the homepage, all previous prediction videos I made this year. If you want to watch any of those or any of the ones I've done the past few years, you can go right ahead. There's also the canceled series where I go over all the movies that were supposed to come out but didn't. I just made an episode like yesterday about Horizon and American Saga chapters 1 and 2 and The Beekeeper. So I made that episode and I've now made 210 episodes. I think I talked about Exorcist, but I think I may have talked about it one time. Yes, one time only. It was very recently. It was episode 204. And the thing is, this movie was supposed to come out next weekend on the 13th, which would have been, an ideal release date because Friday the 13th, spooky, and Friday the 13th in October, that's a match made in heaven, in horror heaven. But yeah, but then the Taylor Swift Eras Tour was announced, and then those pre-sale numbers came in, and all movies around it were like, shit, and decided to just dip and just get out of there. And so Exorcist Believer was moved up a week because of Taylor Swift. So just want to mention that. So yeah, I mentioned it one time. And I guess I could just, I mentioned the sequel before mentioning the first movie, which is really weird. But I guess I can mention that one just for shits and giggles. That was episode 198 where I talked about alongside Challengers and Poor Things and Saltburn. So yeah. But I talked about Exorcist Believer with the Taylor Swift Eras Tour movie announcement. So you can watch that video, but if you want to watch any of the past canceled episodes I made on the channel, want to binge them all from beginning to now, I highly encourage you to do that, so go do it. There's also box office recaps where I go over the box office results for any particular month. My September recap will come out next week. That video is going to be so sad to discuss because September was rough. It was real rough. So yeah, stay tuned for that video. But if you want to watch any of the past recap videos I made on the channel, you can go right ahead. And yeah, that's it. That's all. I am out. Goodbye.